The sky above Midtown Manhattan didn't just tear, it shrieked. It wasn't the rhythmic, manufactured sonic boom of a Vought-approved interceptor or the blue-streaked blur of a train breaking the sound barrier. This was a jagged, emerald fracture in reality, a vacuum-sealed pop that shattered the reinforced glass of the surrounding skyscrapers. From the heart of the rift, a streak of green light slammed into the pavement of 42nd Street with the force of an orbital kinetic strike. Asphalt turned to molten slag. The shockwave flipped a Vought security transport like a coin, sending it tumbling through the front of a 7-Eleven convenience store. As the dust and ozone settled, the silence was heavy, broken only by the frantic chirping of car alarms. In the center of the crater stood something that did not belong to the world of Compound Phi. On it was a massive, hulking silhouette with 4 muscular arms, crimson skin, and 4 eyes that burned with a disciplined, predatory light. On its chest, a glowing green hourglass emblem pulsed with a steady, rhythmic thrum. 4 arms shook the debris from his shoulders, his 4 eyes narrowing as he took in the surroundings. This wasn't Bellwood. The air tasted of salt and heavy industrial smog, and the faces staring back from the digital billboards weren't the alien threats he was used to. They were faces of heroes, clean-cut, smiling, and commercialized. "Okay," the creature rumbled, the voice of 15-year-old Ben Tennyson carrying a gravelly, alien resonance. Definitely missed the turn at the Null Void. Before he could recalibrate the Omnitrix, the sound of heavy boots echoed against the pavement. Vought tactical teams, new outfitted in Black Ops gear and carrying high-caliber suppressors, swarmed the rim of the crater. Behind them, a sleek black SUV screeched to a halt. A man with a calculated, cold expression stepped out, Ashley Barrett's predecessor's understudy, screaming into a satellite phone about unauthorized Supe activity and intellectual property infringement. Target identified. It's some kind of biosuit, or a freak, the lead operative barked into his comms. "Standard containment protocols. If it bleeds, we can brand it. Fire!" The air was suddenly filled with the rhythmic thud of beanbag rounds and experimental neurotoxin darts. In the world of the boys, these tactics brought down rogue Supes within seconds. Against a Tetraman from the planet Koros, it was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. Ben didn't hesitate, since he didn't have the luxury. He lunged, his 4 arms moving in a coordinated blur. He didn't use lethal force, that wasn't his style. But the sheer physics of his movement was devastating. He clapped all 4 hands together, creating a focused sonic shockwave that sent the tactical team flying backward, their riot shields shattering like brittle plastic. "I don't know who you guys are," 4 arms growled, leaping out of the crater and landing with a bone-shaking thud in front of the Vought executive. "But where I'm from, we usually start with hello before the shooting starts." As the executive scrambled back, a shadow fell over the street. The crowd of panicked civilians suddenly went quiet. Ben looked up. Descending from the clouds with the calculated grace of a god was a man in a blue suit and a star-spangled cape. The sun caught the gold of his eagle pauldrons. Homelander landed softly, his boots clicking on the pavement, a perfect, terrifying smile plastered across his face. Now, Homelander said, his voice dripping with a synthetic warmth that made Ben's skin crawl. "That's not very neighborly, is it? You're causing quite a mess in my city, big guy. Why don't we see what's under the mask?" Ben felt the Omnitrix on his chest beep, a yellow warning light. The DNA scanner was spinning wildly. It wasn't detecting a new species. It was detecting something wrong. Something mutated. Ben squared his shoulders, all 4 fists clenching. He could see the micro-twitches in Homelander's jaw, the way his eyes didn't quite match the smile. He had faced Vilgax. He had faced Hybrid. He knew a monster when he saw one, even if it wore a cape. But if you crave stories of cosmic collisions and impossible heroes, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to the dark millennium. The green light of the Omnitrix flickered, the transformation timing out. In a flash of emerald, the 10-foot red giant vanished, replaced by a lean teenager in a green jacket. Ben Tennyson stared up at the leader of the Seven, his hand hovering over the dial. "It's not a mask," Ben said, his voice steady. "And I don't think you're going to like what happens when I turn it back on." Homelander's smile didn't falter, but it tightened. His eyes, blue and cold as a winter morning, flicked down to the lean teenager standing where a mountain of red muscle had been moments before. The crowd, previously terrified, was now hushed in a state of collective confusion. To the citizens of New York, a Supe was a person born with gifts, or so the Vought propaganda went. They didn't transform into four-armed aliens. They didn't turn into light and energy. "A kid," Homelander whispered, his voice carrying just enough volume for the nearby news cameras to pick up. "Just a kid playing with toys he doesn't understand." He stepped forward, the heavy thud of his boots sounding like a funeral march. "You almost hurt these people, son. You're lucky I was in the neighborhood to save them from, whatever you are." Ben Tennyson didn't flinch. He'd stared down the hybrid as they threatened to scour the galaxy of life. He wasn't about to be intimidated by a man who looked like he'd been designed in a focus group. "I was saving myself from the guys you sent to shoot me," Ben retorted, gesturing to the groaning Vought tactical team. "And I'm not your son. Name's Ben." The air pressure seemed to drop. Homelander reached out, his hand moving with a speed that would have been invisible to a normal human. He intended to crush the boy's shoulder, a friendly gesture that would leave the bone in splinters, a favorite tactic for silencing dissent. But Ben's hand was already on the dial. Green flash. The space where Ben stood was suddenly occupied by a lanky, blue-furred creature with 4 arms and a long, prehensile tail. Spider Monkey chirped, leaping vertically 40 feet into the air and clinging to the side of a glass-walled skyscraper. "Missed me," Spider Monkey taunted, his 6 eyes tracking Homelander's every twitch. Homelander's jaw clenched. The cameras were rolling. He couldn't just melt the brat in front of a live audience. Not yet. "Vought property," Homelander said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous hiss meant only for Ben's ears. "That watch, that tech, it belongs to us. You're an unregistered biological asset, and I'm taking you in. You want the watch?" Spider Monkey swung from a flagpole, firing a stream of high-tensile webbing. The sticky, biological silk hit Homelander's chest, pinning his star-spangled cape to the brickwork of a historic building. "Come and get it. But fair warning, I've got 9 more guys who are way crankier than this one." Homelander ripped the webbing away with a snarl of disgust, the fabric of his cape tearing slightly. The sight of the greatest hero on Earth struggling with blue goo caused a ripple of stifled gasps from the crowd. For the first time in his life, Homelander felt the sting of being mocked. He didn't fly after Ben. He stayed grounded, playing the part for the lenses. "Get the Deep and A train down here," Homelander barked into his internal comms. "And get the cleanup crew. I want this monkey in a lab by sunset." Ben, meanwhile, was already 3 blocks away, swinging through the concrete canyons of New York. His heart was racing. The Omnitrix's DNA scanner was still pulsing a deep, sickly orange, a color he'd only seen when encountering corrupted DNA, or the DNA leans. He landed on a secluded rooftop, the transformation sparking out as he returned to human form. "This place is wrong," Ben muttered, checking the Omnitrix's interface. "The energy readings. There's no mana, no spark, just chemicals." "You got that right, kid." Ben spun around, his hand hovering over the watch. Standing near the roof access door was a man in a black trench coat. He was rugged, bearded, and smelled of cheap cigarettes and expensive vengeance. Behind him stood a massive, silent man with a physique like a brick wall and a younger, nervous-looking guy with a frantic expression. "William Butcher," the man said, tipping an imaginary hat. "And you, Sunshine, are the biggest middle finger to Vought International I've seen in 20 years, which makes you someone I'd very much like to have a drink with." Ben narrowed his eyes. "You're with the guys in the suits?" Butcher laughed, a harsh, dry sound. "Do I look like a corporate shill? No, we're the ones who keep the Supes in line when they decide to laser a bus full of orphans for a laugh. And believe me, your new friend in the Cape, he's done a lot worse than that." Ben looked at the Omnitrix, then back at the man who called himself Butcher. He could sense the man's anger, but there was a strange sort of honesty in it, a grounded, gritty reality that the heroes in the street lacked. "The watch said their DNA was corrupted," Ben said softly. "It ain't DNA, kid. It's a chemistry set called Compound Vi," Butcher said, stepping into the light. "They aren't heroes, they're products. And Vought, they're the ones who own the factory. You just showed up with a better brand, and they're going to kill you for it. Now, are you going to stand there looking pretty, or are you going to help us burn the whole lot of them down?" Ben Tennyson looked down at the streets below, where Vought sirens were already wailing. He thought about his grandpa, about the plumbers, and the oath he'd taken to protect the innocent. He didn't know if he could trust Butcher, but he knew for certain he couldn't trust the man in the blue cape. "I don't do burning down," Ben said, his thumb clicking the dial of the Omnitrix, which glowed a defiant, brilliant green. "But I do know how to deal with bullies." The safe house was a cramped, damp basement in the Flatiron district, smelling of copper, old grease, and the distinct, ozone-heavy scent of Mother's Milk's cleaning supplies. Billy Butcher sat across from Ben, a tablet flickering with grainy footage of the four-arms arrival. Beside him, Huey Campbell sat on a plastic crate, staring at Ben as if he were an unexploded bomb. "So, let me get this straight," Huey stammered, his hands shaking slightly. You're not a Supe? You're an alien, or you use a watch to become an alien?" "Both," Ben said, leaning against a rusted workbench. He tapped the green faceplate of the Omnitrix. "This is the most powerful piece of technology in the galaxy. It's a library of DNA. I don't just look like those creatures. I become them, every cell, every instinct." Butcher leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a predatory curiosity. "And this DNA, it's clean. No Compound V, no Vought chemicals?" "I don't even know what Compound V is," Ben replied, his voice hardening. "But when I scanned that guy in the Cape, the watch flagged him as a genetic anomaly. He's not a separate species. He's a human whose genetic code is being held together by duct tape and high-octane poison." Mother's Milk, who had been silently monitoring a police scanner, looked up. "That poison makes him the most dangerous thing on the planet, kid. He can fly, he's invulnerable, and he can melt a hole through a tank with a look, and he's a psychopath." "I've fought worse," Ben said simply. He'd faced the hybrid, creatures that viewed all other life as a plague, and he'd faced Vilgax, a warlord who had conquered 10 worlds. Back home, being a hero isn't about the cape or the cameras. It's about doing what's right, because you're the only one who can. Butcher let out a sharp, cynical bark of laughter. "That's a lovely sentiment, Sunshine. Truly, it'd look great on a lunchbox. But here, in this world, that watch makes you a target. Vought doesn't care about doing what's right. They care about their stock price. Right now, you're an untapped resource, a pure source of power they didn't create and can't control. They'll want to open you up to see how the gears turn." "They can try," Ben said. "They won't just try," Frenchie chimed in from the corner, where he was meticulously disassembling a Vought-issue neurodart. "They will send the 7, not to arrest you, but to neutralize you. They cannot have a boy who is more powerful than their gods walking around for free. So it breaks the brand." As if on cue, the basement began to vibrate. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a rhythmic, high-frequency thrumming that made the glasses on the table chatter. Movement on the street, Mother's Milk whispered, checking the periscope. "It's him, the fish gear, and the fast one. The Deep and A train," Huey hissed, his face going pale. "They're tracking the energy signature of the watch." Ben looked at the ceiling, then at the boys. He could feel the Omnitrix humming against his wrist, sensing the approach of hostile DNA signatures. "You guys stay down here. If they find you with me, they'll kill you." "We're used to it, kid," Butcher said, pulling a crowbar from his coat. "But go on, show him what a real hero looks like. And I want to see the look on A-Train's face when he hits something he can't break." Ben didn't use the stairs. He slammed the dial down, and in a flash of emerald light, he was gone. Outside, the alleyway was suddenly illuminated by a green glow. A-Train was a blur of blue and white, circling the block at max speeds, while the Deep stood near a leaking fire hydrant, looking uncharacteristically serious. Vought tactical drones hovered overhead, their spotlights sweeping the brickwork. "Target sighted!" A-Train's voice crackled over the Vox. He didn't stop to talk. He was a human bullet, intended to hit Ben with enough kinetic force to liquefy his internal organs before he could even blink. But A-Train hadn't accounted for the reaction speed of an aerophibian. In another flash, Jettray soared into the air. Well, his wings were a blur of yellow and red, and his eyes glowed with neuroshock energy. As A-Train rounded the corner at 700 miles per hour, Jettray didn't move out of the way. He accelerated toward him. The collision should have leveled the block. Instead, Jettray executed a perfect, high G barrel roll, his tail lashing out with pinpoint accuracy. A beam of green energy struck the pavement inches in front of A-Train's feet. The speedster, unable to compensate for the sudden thermal expansion of the air, tripped. He tumbled, a human skipstone bouncing off the asphalt and crashing through a line of parked cars before coming to a stop in a pile of twisted metal. Jettray leveled off, hovering 10 feet above the ground. The Deep stared up, his jaw dropping. What are you?" the Deep stammered, reaching for his belt. "Hike, I'm the guy who's going to tell you to go home," Jettray hissed, his voice like a crackling electrical fire. "Before things get complicated." "You tripped A-Train," the Deep whispered, his eyes wide. "Nobody trips A-Train." "Consider it a learning experience," Ben said. But his sensors were screaming. A-Train was already getting up, his eyes bloodshot and frantic, his heart racing at a suicidal tempo. And from the rooftops above, a dark, silent shadow was descending. Black Noir had arrived. The alleyway was no longer just a corridor of brick and shadows. It had become a tactical kill box. A train scrambled to his feet, his chest heaving, his suit torn and sparking from the friction of his tumble. He looked less like a hero and more like a cornered animal, his pupils dilated to pinpricks. To his left, the Deep stood paralyzed, realizing his authority over the local goldfish meant absolutely nothing against a creature that moved like a fighter jet. But it was the third presence that shifted the air. Black Noir landed without a sound, a living void in the middle of the trash-strewn street. He didn't boast. He didn't smile for the cameras. He simply drew a pair of obsidian-coated combat knives, his head tilting with a mechanical, unsettling curiosity. 3-on-1? Jettray's voice crackled, his yellow eyes tracking Noir's center of mass. "Vought really doesn't like losing, does it? You're a glitch, kid," A-Train screamed, the compound V in his system pushing his heart rate into the red zone. "And Vought fixes glitches." A-Train vanished into a blur of blue light. In the same heartbeat, Black Noir lunged, his movements a masterclass in silent lethality. In the boys' universe, this was a death sentence. But Ben Tennyson had spent years fighting across the stars. He didn't see speed, he saw patterns. Green flash. Jettray was gone. In his place stood a plant-like entity with a head of flaming petals and vine-like limbs. Swamp Fire didn't move. He let A-Train's shoulder check connect. The speedster hit the Methanosian's trunk-like body with enough force to shatter a concrete wall, but swamp fire simply rippled, his rubbery, regenerative hide absorbing the kinetic energy. A train rebounded, gasping as if he'd hit a wall of reinforced tires. Simultaneously, swamp fire's hand shot out, catching Black Noir's wrist mid-strike. The knives scraped against Ben's bark-like skin, drawing no blood, only a thick, pungent sap. "My turn," Swampfire rumbled. With a flick of his wrist, Swampfire ignited the methane in his palms. A concentrated blast of fire erupted, not to kill, but to create a wall of thermal pressure. The explosion sent Black Noir skittering back, his tactical suit scorched. Swampfire then stomped his foot, sending thick, rapidly growing vines tunneling through the asphalt. They erupted beneath the deep, wrapping around his legs and hoisting him into the air like a prize catch in a net of thorns. "Let me go. I'm a member of the Seven. I'm a king," the deep wailed, dangling upside down. "You're a bully with a bad haircut," Swampfire retorted. A train tried to reset, his boots skidding for traction, but the alley was now a jungle. The vines were everywhere, woven into a dense, sticky mesh that fouled his path. Every time he tried to accelerate, he risked a snapped ankle. "Vought is watching this, you know," A-Train hissed, clutching his bruised ribs. "Homelander is watching. You think you're winning? You're just making the funeral more expensive." "Then tell them to stop sending middle management," Ben said, the fire in his hands dying down to a low, ominous orange glow. "I'm not interested in your company politics. I'm interested in why you're attacking a teenager who just fell out of the sky." Black Noir didn't respond with words. So he reached into his belt and tossed a high-frequency sonic disruptor. The device hit the ground and emitted a piercing, glass-shattering shriek. It was designed to neutralize Supes with enhanced hearing, but for a Methanosian whose ears were sensitive to atmospheric vibrations. It felt like a hot needle through the brain. Swampfire staggered, his flames flickering out. The vines holding the deep loosened. "Now!" a train yelled, seeing the opening. He ignored the pain, drawing on every drop of V in his blood. He didn't go for a strike, he went for the watch. If he could bring the green flash back to Vought Tower, he'd be the golden boy again. Ben's vision swam, the sonic pulse scrambling his equilibrium. He saw A-Train's hand reaching for the Omnitrix. The speedster's fingers were inches away from the dial when a thunderous crack echoed through the alley. A high-caliber sniper round tore through the air, hitting the pavement an inch from A-Train's foot. The speedster flinched, his momentum carrying him past Ben and into a pile of wooden crates. "Oi!" a voice boomed from the fire escape above. "Leave the lad alone, you blue-streaked wanker!" Billy Butcher stood on the metal grating, a Barrett .50 caliber slung over his shoulder, a wicked grin plastered on his face. Beside him, Frenchie was already tossing a second device, a localized EMP. The device detonated, killing the Vought tactical drones overhead and short-circuiting Black Noir's high-tech HUD. "Show's over, boys," Butcher shouted. Vaught's eyes just went dark. "Now, Ben, get us out of here before the big blonde bastard decides to show up." Ben shook off the disorientation, the Omnitrix recalibrating to filter out the frequency. He looked at the bruised, tangled members of the Seven, then up at Butcher. He didn't like the man's methods, but the heroes here had just tried to lobotomize him with a sonic grenade. "Hold on," Swampfire said, his vines lashing out to grab Butcher and the others from the fire escape. In a flash of green, the group vanished. When the smoke cleared, the alley was empty, leaving the deep dangling from a lamppost and a humiliated A-Train staring at the spot where a 15-year-old had just outfought the world's most elite strike team. The safe house was now an abandoned Vought-owned bottling plant in New Jersey, a cathedral of rusted iron and shattered glass. Ben stood by a window, his human reflection ghost-like against the grime. On the streets below, The digital screens of New York were already spinning the narrative. Alien terrorist attacks 7 in unprovoked ambush, the headline screamed. They showed a carefully edited clip of Swampfire's vines hoisting the deep, omitting the sonic grenade and the tactical teams. "They're fast," Ben muttered, his thumb tracing the edge of the Omnitrix. "They turned me into a villain in less than an hour." "Welcome to the machine, kid," Butcher said, leaning against a crate of Turbo Rush energy drink. "Vought doesn't win fights with fists. They win them with PR. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the face of every nightmare in America. They'll have a movie deal for your origin story before they even find your body." "I don't care about the news," Ben said, turning back to the group. "I care about what I saw. When I was Swampfire, I could smell the chemicals coming off those guys. It wasn't just in their blood, it was their breath, their sweat. It's like they're walking oil spills." Huey, who was nervously checking a laptop, looked up. "That's the Compound V. It's a stabilizing agent, but Vought is freaking out, Ben. I'm into their internal servers, thanks to a few backdoors I shouldn't have, and they're moving a Package 4B to a site called Red River. They think your DNA is the key to fixing the side effects of V." "Side effects?" Ben asked. "Supes don't live forever, sunshine," Butcher grunted. "Their hearts explode, they go mad, or they just leak. Vought wants your pure alien code to patch the holes in their science project. They aren't just trying to stop you, they're trying to harvest you." Ben's face went cold. He'd dealt with DNA splicers like Dr. Animo, but this was corporate-sponsored vivisection. His gaze shifted to the monitors, where a live broadcast showed Starlight, a girl who actually looked like she gave a damn, standing beside a grim-faced Queen Maeve. They were being forced to read a script about standing together against the alien threat. "They're using them," Ben said softly. "The ones who actually want to help, they're hostages." "Everyone's a hostage to Vought," Mother's Milk said, cleaning a handgun. "But we have a lead. Vought is staging a rescue mission tonight at a derailed Amtrak train in Pennsylvania. It's a total setup, a PR stunt to show Homelander saving people from alien-aligned insurgents. It's the perfect place to pull the curtain back." Ben looked at the watch. The green glow was steady, comforting. He knew Butcher wanted to use him as a weapon to destroy Vought, but Ben had a different objective. He needed to show the world that a hero wasn't something you bought in a vial. "We're going," Ben said. "But we're not doing it your way, Butcher. We're not just burning it down. We're saving those people for real. If Vought wants a show, I'm going to give them a season finale they'll never forget." The train tracks near Harrisburg were a graveyard of twisted steel and billowing steam. Vaught's film crews were already in position, their high-intensity lights turning the wreckage into a stage. Scores of actors dressed as terrified passengers were huddled in a tilted carriage waiting for their cue. High above, Homelander hovered, his cape fluttering in the artificial wind. He looked down at the director, who gave a thumbs up. And "Action!" the director screamed. Homelander began his descent, his face set in a mask of stoic concern. "Don't worry, citizens. Help is here." He reached for the door of the carriage, intending to rip it open with a flourish of choreographed strength. Suddenly, a green streak divided the night. A massive, armored, beetle-like creature, easily the size of a small car, plummeted from the sky and landed between Homelander and the train. Cannonbolt tucked into a sphere, his yellow and white plating shimmering under the spotlights. With a thunderous roar of spinning friction, he slammed into the ground, creating a crater that sent the camera crew scrambling. "Sorry, hero," Cannonbolt's muffled voice echoed from within the shell. "This train is under new management." Homelander froze, his hand still on the door handle. The passengers, who were actually Vought interns and low-level employees, screamed in genuine terror. This wasn't in the script. "You again," Homelander hissed, his eyes beginning to glow with a faint, murderous crimson. I was going to let the scientists have you, but I think I'll just settle for a trophy." "The only thing you're taking home," Cannonbolt growled, unrolling and standing tall, his massive claws digging into the tracks, "is a reality check." As the cameras rolled, live streaming to millions, the what-if scenario finally hit its breaking point. It wasn't a PR stunt anymore. It was a war. The red glow in Homelander's eyes deepened, the air around his face shimmering with the heat of a building solar flare. To the millions watching the live stream, it looked like a standoff between a god and a monster. To Ben, it felt like standing in front of a pressurized boiler about to burst. "Everyone, get back, now!" Cannonbolt's voice boomed, his massive form shielding the derailed carriage. Homelander didn't wait for a witty retort. He unleashed 2 beams of concentrated crimson thermal energy. In the boys' universe, these beams cut through private jets and armored bunkers like a hot wire through wax. They struck Cannonbolt's chest and reflected. The Arburian Pellerota's armor was chemically designed to withstand the friction of atmospheric re-entry. A tactical laser was just a nuisance. The beams bounced off Ben's rounded yellow plates, shearing through a nearby Vought lighting rig and sending a shower of sparks over the film crew. "My turn," Ben rumbled. Cannonbolt tucked back into a sphere, the Omnitrix pulsing at the center of the coil. With a sound like a jet engine spinning up, he launched. He didn't just roll. He defied physics, ricocheting off a derailed tanker and striking Homelander mid-air. The impact sounded like 2 tectonic plates colliding. The greatest hero on Earth was sent skip-stoning across the debris-strewn field, smashing through a promotional billboard of his own face before cratering into the hillside. The silence that followed was deafening. On screen, the viewership numbers were skyrocketing. The alien hadn't just survived. He'd grounded the ungroundable. "Butcher now," Ben yelled, she unrolling. From the tree line, the boys went to work. They weren't fighting Supes, they were fighting the narrative. Frenchie and Huey, wearing Vought-branded vests they'd swiped, began ushering the passengers away, not to a Vought processing center, but toward the live feed cameras. "Check the crates," Mother's Milk shouted, pry bar in hand. "The insurgent weapons, they're Vought stamped." As MM kicked open a shipping container supposedly filled with terrorist explosives, the cameras caught the truth. Every rifle, every alien tech bomb bore the sleek silver logo of Vought International. It wasn't an insurgency. It was a staged massacre meant to justify a military contract. "You're ruining the shot, kid." A new shadow fell over the tracks. Queen Maeve stood there, her sword drawn, her expression a mask of weary resignation. Beside her, Starlight looked conflicted, her hands glowing with restless starlight energy. "Maeve, look at the crates," Ben said, his form shifting. In a flash of emerald, he was human again, standing small but defiant in his green jacket. "You know what's in them. You know this whole rescue was supposed to end with these people dead so Vought could sell more V." "It doesn't matter what I know," Maeve said, her voice hollow. "He's coming back, and when he gets up, he's going to kill everyone here just to tidy up the witness list. Give them the watch, Ben. Maybe they'll let the rest of us live." "I don't give up," Ben said, his hand slamming the dial, "and I don't let people die for a stock price." Green flash. This time, Ben didn't choose a brawler. He chose a specialist. Brainstorm stood on the tracks, the massive, crustacean-like genius clicking his claws, his massive brain case hummed with electrostatic potential. "The probability of your compliance is low, but the necessity of your assistance is absolute," Brainstorm announced, his voice refined and aristocratic. "Mistress Annie January, if you would be so kind as to redirect the ambient electrical discharge from those damaged lighting rigs into my cerebral cortex. I believe I can broadcast the internal Vought server logs directly to every smartphone within a 500-mile radius." Starlight blinked. "You can do that?" "I can calculate the trajectory of an electron in a hurricane," Brainstorm replied. "This corporate firewall is elementary." But before Annie could move, the hillside exploded. Homelander rose from the crater, his suit shredded, his cape gone, so that his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He wasn't smiling anymore. He wasn't playing for the cameras. He looked at the passengers, he looked at the boys, and he looked at the talking crab on the tracks. "I'm going to keep your heart in a jar on my desk," Homelander hissed, his voice trembling with the weight of his ego breaking. He took flight, a blurred streak of blue and gold, aimed directly at the crowd of witnesses. He was going to erase the evidence. "Calculation complete," Brainstorm clicked. "Action required." Homelander was no longer a hero. He was a falling star made of spite and murder. He broke the sound barrier 10 feet off the ground, the trailing shockwave shattering the remaining windows of the Amtrak carriages. He didn't care about the cameras anymore. He didn't care about the actors. He saw the world as a whiteboard, and he was the eraser. "Annie, the rigs, now!" Ben's voice, filtered through the refined, echoing clicks of Brainstorm, cut through the roar of the wind. Starlight didn't hesitate. She drew from the shattered lighting towers, her eyes turning into twin suns of pure white energy. She channeled the massive surge of current not at Homelander, but directly into Brainstorm's open cranial plates. The Methanosian cerebro-crustacean flexed his claws, his massive pink brain glowing with a terrifying intensity. "The data transmission initiated," Brainstorm hummed. As Homelander lunged, Brainstorm didn't move. He projected a localized electrokinetic shield, a shimmering dome of gold energy that caught Homelander's fist mid-flight. The impact felt like a hammer hitting an anvil. The air ionized, smelling of ozone and burnt sugar. At that exact moment, every smartphone in the crowd, every news van's monitor, and every jumbotron in Times Square flickered. The Vought server logs, the package for B files, the Red River experiments, and the raw footage of Homelander's previous accidental massacres began to play on a loop. The world saw the hero of America laughing as he let a plane full of people plunge into the Atlantic. "What have you done?" Homelander screamed, his face inches from the golden energy barrier. "I'll burn you. I'll burn everything." "Statistically speaking," Brainstorm clicked, his voice calm despite the strain of holding back a god, "your relevance has reached its expiration date." Homelander roared and flew upward, circling back for a kinetic strike that would surely shatter the shield. But he was interrupted. Queen Maeve, her face set in a mask of grim determination, leapt from a derailed tanker, her fist connecting with Homelander's jaw, with enough force to send him spiraling into the mud. "Enough, John!" Maeve yelled. "It's over!" "It's never over!" Homelander shrieked, recovering midair. He looked at the cameras, then at the crowd. He realized the narrative was dead. The brand was ash. The only thing left was the violence. He didn't go for Maeve. He went for the weakest link. He dove toward Huey and the cowering Vought interns. The green flash. Brainstorm was gone. In his place stood a towering, crystalline entity made of translucent green diamond. Chromastone stood his ground, his many-faceted surface catching the red glow of Homelander's heat vision. "Get behind me," Ben commanded. Homelander unleashed everything. Two beams of concentrated hatred slammed into Chromastone's chest. But Chromastone didn't break. He didn't even flinch. He was a living conductor. He absorbed the thermal energy, his internal crystals glowing brighter and brighter until he looked like a miniature star. "Thanks for the recharge," Chromastone rumbled. He leveled his arms, and a massive beam of rainbow-hued multispectral energy erupted from his palms. It wasn't just heat. It was a physical force that hammered Homelander back through the air and pinning him against the side of a derailed locomotive. The steel groaned and buckled under the pressure. From the shadows, Butcher stepped out, a smirk on his face as he watched the unbeatable god struggle against the prismatic light. Told you, kid, a real hero is just a spanner in the works they didn't see coming. But as the dust settled, the Omnitrix began to beep, a rapid, insistent red. The power drain of absorbing Homelander's full output was pushing the watch to its limit. "Ben, look out!" Starlight screamed. Behind the locomotive, something else was moving. Vought hadn't just sent the 7, they had sent their Contingency. A massive, silent figure in heavy ceramic plating stepped into the light. It was Black Noir, but his suit was different, outfitted with experimental anti-alien dampeners, and in his hand was a glowing, green-tinted syringe. The air around the train tracks had grown thick and heavy, the smell of ozone mixing with the metallic tang of blood and cold grease. Ben stood his ground as Crumma Stone, his crystalline skin still thrumming with the residual heat of Homelander's fury. But the Omnitrix was screaming. The red light pulsed in a frantic rhythm, a warning that even the Crystal Sapien's unique physiology had a saturation point. Before Ben could vent the excess energy, Black Noir moved. He didn't move like a man. He moved like a glitch in the world's physics. He was a shadow that didn't obey the flickering spotlights. In his grip was the Package 4B prototype, a specialized neurotoxin delivery system designed by Vought's R&D specifically to counter the green flash. "Ben, move!" Butcher's voice was a distant roar, and punctuated by the thunderous crack of his sniper rifle. The .50 caliber round struck Noir's shoulder, but the ceramic plating barely pitted. The silent assassin didn't even break his stride. He lunged, driving the glowing green syringe toward the gap in Chroma Stone's crystalline shoulder. The needle hissed as it pierced the energy-rich sap between the crystals. Instantly, a surge of artificial feedback tore through the Omnitrix. The watch didn't just beep, it wailed. The green light turned a sickly, corrosive purple. Ben felt a coldness he had never known, a synthetic silence that felt like a vacuum in his veins. "The watch," Ben gasped, his crystalline form flickering. In a shower of purple sparks, the transformation collapsed. Ben Tennyson tumbled onto the gravel, a 15-year-old boy gasping for air. His skin pale and the Omnitrix faceplate dark and unresponsive. Noir didn't hesitate. He raised a serrated combat blade, the moonlight catching the edge of the steel. He wasn't there to capture. He was there to clean. "Get away from him, you silent freak!" Starlight yelled. She unleashed a blinding flash of light, but Noir had already anticipated the move, his specialized visor darkening to compensate. He swung the blade in a wide, lethal arc aimed at Ben's neck. Clang. The blade didn't hit flesh. It hit the shield of Queen Maeve. She stood over Ben, her breathing ragged, her own armor scorched from her earlier scuffle with Homelander. "I'm done being Vaught's property," Maeve spat, her eyes burning with a fierce, rediscovered light. "And I'm definitely done watching you kill children." She kicked Noir in the chest, through the force of the blow sending him skidding back 20 feet. But they had a bigger problem. Behind them, the locomotive groaned. The steel hissed as it was torn apart from the inside. Homelander emerged from the wreckage of the train car, his hair matted with blood, his suit a ruin of blue and gold. He looked at the crowd, he looked at the boys, and then he looked at Ben, who was struggling to stand, his hand frantically tapping the dead faceplate of the Omnitrix. "Look at you," Homelander whispered, his voice cracking with a terrifying, hysterical edge. "Without your toy, you're just nothing. You're just another piece of meat for the grinder." He began to walk forward, each step cracking the asphalt. Starlight, Maeve, and the boys formed a ragged line in front of Ben. They were outgunned, exhausted, and often facing a god who had finally lost his mind. "Give me the boy," Homelander commanded, his eyes glowing a faint, ominous red. "And I might kill the rest of you quickly. I might even leave a few witnesses to tell the story of how the hero of America saved the world from the alien virus. You want the kid?" Butcher stepped forward, his crowbar held low, his face a mask of suicidal defiance. "You've got to go through us, you blonde cunt." Ben looked down at the Omnitrix. It was cold, dead. The Vought dampener had locked the core, but Ben remembered what Grandpa Max had always told him. It's not the watch that makes the hero. He closed his eyes, focusing not on the technology, but on the connection he felt to the device, the way it linked his DNA to the vast tapestry of the universe. He reached deep into the core of the watch, and past the locks, past the dampeners, looking for the spark that Professor Paradox had once told him was immutable. "I'm not nothing," Ben whispered, his voice growing steady. A faint, green heartbeat began to pulse at the center of the dark watch. It was small, fragile, but it was growing. "I am Ben Tennyson," he said, standing up and pushing past Maeve. He stared directly into Homelander's murderous eyes. "And I've beaten things that make you look like a mascot." The Omnitrix suddenly erupted with a blinding, pure white light. Not the green of the recalibrated dial, but the white of a system rebooting at a fundamental level. The Vought dampener shattered, the green fluid evaporating into steam. "System override," the Omnitrix's voice announced, no longer mechanical but resonant. "New DNA signature detected and accepted." The white light didn't just illuminate the wreckage, it scoured it. The radiance was so pure it seemed to wash the color from Homelander's suit, turning the greatest hero on Earth into a pale, flickering shadow. The Vought dampener, a pinnacle of human chemical engineering, had tried to cage a force that spanned galaxies. It had failed. The Omnitrix hadn't just rebooted, it had evolved, sensing the toxic, stagnant environment of this universe and selecting the one form capable of thriving in a world defined by its own decay. "What is this?" Homelander screamed, shielding his eyes as the light burned into his retinas. "What are you doing?" Ben didn't answer. He couldn't. His molecular structure was being rewritten at a subatomic level. He felt the weight of the world drop away, replaced by a cold, infinite clarity. Green flash. The light vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Standing on the tracks was a figure that made even the Vought Supes look like children's drawings. It was a tall, elegant silhouette composed of the darkest void, speckled with the light of 1,000,000,000 distant stars. Its eyes were 3 green pinpricks of infinite wisdom, and its presence felt like the sudden, crushing weight of the deep ocean. Alien X stood motionless. The silence that followed was absolute. The wind stopped. The fires from the derailed train ceased to flicker, frozen in a moment of temporal stasis. Billy Butcher lowered his crowbar, his mouth slightly agape. He had spent his life hunting gods, but for the first time, he felt he was standing in the presence of something truly divine, and it was terrifying. "I don't care what you've turned into," Homelander roared, to his ego finally snapping. He didn't see a celestial sapien. He saw a challenge to his supremacy. He launched himself forward, his fists clenched, every ounce of compound V-fueled strength behind a strike intended to shatter the stars. Alien X didn't move. He didn't raise a hand. He simply existed. Homelander's fist connected with Alien X's chest and stopped. There was no sound of impact, no shockwave. It was as if Homelander had punched the vacuum of space itself. The kinetic energy didn't dissipate. It was simply erased. Homelander's arm remained extended, his knuckles pressed against the star-flecked void, his face twisting from rage to a sudden, chilling realization of insignificance. "My turn to speak," Alien X rumbled. The voice wasn't a sound. It was a vibration felt in the marrow of everyone present. It was the harmonious resonance of Bellicus and Serena, filtered through Ben's iron will. With a casual flick of a finger, a movement that seemed to take an eternity and a microsecond all at once, Alien X flicked Homelander's forehead. The hero of America was launched backward. He didn't fly. He was deleted from his current position and reapplied to the side of a distant mountain 3 miles away. The sonic boom arrived seconds later, a thunderous crack that signaled the end of the myth of invulnerability. Alien X turned his gaze toward Black Noir. The silent assassin, usually a machine of pure logic, took a single step back. He raised his serrated blade, a gesture of pathetic defiance. "You are a hollow shell," Alien X stated. With a wave of his hand, the Vought-engineered ceramic armor on Noir's body began to turn into flower petals, and the serrated blade softened into a stream of harmless water that splashed onto the gravel. Noir stood exposed, a broken man in the wreckage of his own design. "Ben," Starlight whispered, her voice trembling. "Is that still you?" Alien X tilted his head. The stars within his body shifted, forming the faint outline of a green jacket. "The boy is here," the entity replied. "But the boy is seeing the truth. This world, it is a fever dream of greed. It needs to wake up." The entity looked up at the sky. He could see the Vought satellites orbiting high above, the digital webs of propaganda, and the billions of people watching the feed. He could see the corruption in the boardrooms and the fear in the streets. "You can't just fix it all with a snap of your fingers, can you?" Butcher asked, his voice uncharacteristically small. "That's the dream, isn't it? One big fix." "Correction is not growth," Alien X replied. "If I fix the world, it remains a world of children. I will not be your king. I will be your mirror." At that moment, the mountain in the distance exploded. A streak of red light shot toward the tracks. Homelander was back, his face a ruin, his eyes bleeding crimson as he pushed his body past the breaking point. He was a cornered animal, and he was coming to end the world that had dared to see him fail. "Motion carried," Alien X whispered to himself. "The final verdict is required. Homelander was no longer a man, nor even a Supe. He was a shrieking engine of pure, unadulterated entitlement. As he tore through the sky, the air behind him didn't just ripple, it ignited. He was pushing his physical form so hard that the compound 5 in his sweat began to combust, trailing a sickly blue flame. He was 3 miles away, then 2, then 1, his eyes fixed on the star-flecked entity standing amidst the wreckage of his reputation. He didn't see a god. He saw a thief who had stolen his spotlight. "I am Homelander," he screamed, the sound echoing across the hills like a dying sun. "I can do whatever I want." Alien X didn't take a defensive stance. Ben, centered within the infinite debate of Bellicus and Serena, reached a consensus with a speed that defied the Celestial Spian's reputation for indecision. So they weren't just judging a man, they were judging a system. As Homelander reached the perimeter of the train tracks, aiming his entire body like a kinetic missile at Ben's chest, Alien X simply held up a palm. Time didn't stop, but it became heavy, syrupy. The blue flames trailing Homelander froze into jagged sculptures of fire. The screaming hero slowed until he was drifting through the air at the speed of a falling leaf, his face contorted in a silent, agonizing roar. "You speak of what you want," Alien X's voice resonated, vibrating the very atoms of the derailed trains. "But you have never known what you are." Alien X's hand didn't strike. It reached into the space between realities. With a gentle tug, the entity pulled at the golden threads of Homelander's being. To the onlookers, Butcher, Maeve, and Starlight, it looked as though Ben was unraveling the air itself. Suddenly, the red glow in Homelander's eyes flickered and died. The impossible strength left his limbs. The blue flames vanished. The god was gone, replaced by a middle-aged man in a shredded suit, falling the final 3 feet to the gravel with a pathetic human thud. Ben hadn't killed him. He had simply reached into the man's genetic history and deleted the compound V. He had erased the super and left only the man. "No," John gasped, his voice thin and cracking as he clawed at the dirt. He tried to fire his heat vision, but only a dry, desperate sob came out. No, give it back! Give it back! Alien X turned his gaze away from the broken man on the ground. He looked at the Vought cameras, which were still broadcasting to every corner of the planet. And he looked through the lenses into the living rooms of millions. The power was never his, Alien X said, his voice reaching every ear on Earth simultaneously. It was yours. You gave him the power of your attention, your fear, and your silence. The monsters you worship are the mirrors of your own apathy. From this moment, the monopoly is over. With a final, sweeping gesture, Alien X sent a pulse of emerald energy across the globe. It wasn't a weapon. It was a digital and physical purge. In an instant, every Vought database, every hidden file on Compound V, and every drop of the chemical in storage was neutralized, turned into harmless saline. The Supes across the world didn't die, but they felt their unnatural gifts fade into memory. The era of corporate gods had ended in a heartbeat. The white light returned, swirling around Alien X until the celestial form began to shrink, the stars condensing back into the shape of a 15-year-old boy in a green jacket. The Omnitrix hissed, its green faceplate glowing with a steady, peaceful light. Ben Tennyson stood in the center of the silent battlefield, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion, but his eyes clear. The silence that followed was broken only by the crackle of cooling metal. Billy Butcher walked forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. He stopped 5 feet from Ben, looking at the boy, then at the sobbing, powerless John on the ground, and finally at the sky where the Vought satellites were now just expensive hunks of junk. "You really did it, didn't you, kid?" Butcher asked, his voice devoid of its usual sarcasm. "You didn't just kill the king. You killed the crown." "The world doesn't need kings, Butcher," Ben said, his voice tired but firm. "It needs people who do the right thing when no one is watching." Queen Maeve stood up, wiping blood from her lip. She felt light. For the first time since she was a girl, she felt the weight of Vaught's expectations lift from her soul. Beside her, Annie, starlight, looked at her hands. They no longer glowed, but she smiled anyway. She was just Annie now, and that was enough. Vought International collapsed within the hour. Without the V and without the marketing, the company was just a collection of empty buildings and terrified executives facing a global tide of litigation. The boys found themselves without a mission, a group of broken men who finally had the chance to heal. And Ben Tennyson stayed long enough to ensure the passengers from the train were safe. As the first rays of dawn broke over the Pennsylvania hills, a familiar blue shimmer appeared in the air, a rift of chronal energy. Professor Paradox stepped out, his pocket watch clicking in the morning air. "Timing is everything, Benjamin," the traveler remarked with a wink. "I believe your grandfather is wondering where you went with the chili fries." Ben looked back at the world he was leaving behind. It was a world that was messy, fractured, and suddenly very human. It would be a long road to recovery, but for the first time in decades, it was their road. "See ya, Butcher," Ben said, stepping toward the rift. "See ya, kid," Butcher muttered, lighting a cigarette. "Don't take any wooden nickels." In a flash of green and blue, so the boy who was a hero by choice vanished, leaving the world of the Seven to find its own way in the light of a new day. Neither corporate gods nor chemical kings could withstand the heart of a true hero. More stories await. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.